Sup, y'all? Welcome to part two. So, getting back to the text, a question was raised to Paul. This First Corinthians 15, starting at verse 35. But someone will say, how are the dead raised? And with what kind of body do they come? You fool, he says. That which you sow does not come to life unless it dies. And that which you sow, you do not sow the body which is to be, but a bare grain, perhaps of wheat or of something else. But God gives it a body just as he wishes, and to each of the seeds a body of its own. Paul really wasn't with the nonsense, y'all. Like he spoke to them in love, but when he had to, have a heavy hand at times, he had one. You feel me? There were lots of shenanigans going on at the church at Corinth. Anyways, Paul is explaining to the Corinthians that we will physically die in these bodies in which sin was sown to. Therefore, we should expect a different kind of body. Pay attention as he goes into more details here. Picking up at verse 42, he says, so also is the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a corruptible body. It is raised an incorruptible body. It is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. It is sown a natural body. Pardon me, y'all. It is raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. I want y'all to keep those comparisons up there in mind. The word Paul keeps using here is spiretai, from the verb spiro, which is in this context refers to something sown into the earth, or in the earth, like a seed. So that sown corruptible, sown dishonor, sown in weakness, that word. Our earthly bodies are sown in corruption, dishonor, and weakness. It will be raised up, igeritai, to an incorruptible, glorified, powerful body. Igero is the verb to raise up, in case you care about vocabulary and all that. Or I should say, in case you want to learn some Koine Greek vocabulary. Anyways, verses 44 through 49, Paul continues making these comparisons between the body of this earth versus the body of heaven. His point being, Adam was the first man of the earth, unfortunately bringing death, while Jesus was the man from heaven who cancels death and gives life. Picking up at verse 50, now I say this, brothers, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the corruptible inherit the incorruptible. That should be sounding familiar, right? Now, here is a consistent phrase Paul will use again in his letter to the Galatians and to the Ephesians. His point will be that no one who practices the deeds of the flesh will inherit the kingdom of God. That's Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 through 21. And then we'll say this again in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 5. The deeds of the flesh, or the works of the flesh, they are opposite, totally opposite to the fruits of the Spirit. Before moving on to the next couple of verses, allow me to remind you that Paul is talking about one singular event. And he's talking about an event that will affect all mankind, not just the believers. Anyways, this was part 2, guys. I will catch y'all in part 3. Deuces.